All right, Brent Pourciau at TopVelocity.net. This video is going to cover key checkpoints that you want to make sure you've accomplished coming out of your off-season program, going into your preseason program to get into your season. So it'd be something too, in the season, I want to make sure I'm still at these points to maintain what I've developed in the off-season. And what we're looking for is obviously effective pitching mechanics that are allowing us to optimize movements for two reasons: to increase performance and reduce stress. So we're trying to distribute the loads, the tension through the kinetic chain. So we want to make sure we're hitting these checkpoints. So I'm just going to kind of broadly hit it. Obviously in each point we go extremely in depth into the musculature, the soft tissue, and the proprioception ability of that joint, and how that's translating to the next joint. We could go forever into that. This is going to hit some basic checkpoints you just can kind of go through quickly in your video analysis to make sure you're there. Now here's the thing: if you're not hitting these checkpoints, then it's hard to have confidence you're going to be healthy. Like I have guys that throw really hard, up to 100 miles an hour in the off season, but missing some of these checkpoints. And even though they're excited they're throwing 100 miles an hour, I'm not as excited because I'm concerned that they're missing points that would keep them healthy. So that's why you got to make sure you're here. And the other thing is, this should be something you don't look at the end of the year. This is something you should understand from the very beginning, where you're trying to get. Because how are you going to build yourself to increase performance for the year, and be more efficient in the year if you don't know what mechanics or what biomechanical map is going to do that for you. So this is really kind of like the beginning, a simple layout of that biomechanical map from the beginning that I wanted to understand, because this is what I'm trying to get to, and then when I get into the season, this is what I'm trying to maintain. Okay, so we're just going to kind of start with little pieces of it here. Drive leg. So drive leg is the only leg on the ground for 3/4 of your delivery. So it's very important, but it's overlooked majority of the time. It's very important because when it's the only leg on the ground, it's your force generator. We interact with the ground as athletes, and better athletes typically interact with the ground not just more explosively, but better use of, say, the power curve, meaning like really good use of the eccentric load to the isometric to the concentric load. So better guys that use the drive leg better in force production aspects are going to really get better at building a good power curve. So on top of that too, there's so many other things that help with sequencing. So this leg is critical because it's going to create force production, that it's energy you're going to get to the ball, and the sequencing, specifically the rotational movement to start the sequence of rotation, is going to start transferring energy efficiently. And if you don't go at the right time with that, then even though you might have created great force production, now your sequencing is off, and now you have breaking the chain, inefficient, something bad could happen. So just so much importance here. Probably going to spend some good time here. So we've talked about this before. What is the lift leg doing? Tons of things. As I come out of leg lift, what I'm trying to do coming out of leg lift is use the stride, use the mound to generate power. If I allow rotation, power is over, because the front leg goes down, everything's open, not much I can do sagittally at that point. I mean, except for front leg extension, which we'll talk about later, but we really shut down the ability to generate force with the back leg when we start rotation early. So obviously the first thing I'm thinking about is delaying rotation. So are you coming out of leg lift as you're squatting, because where there's flexion, that's where we create force production. As you're squatting, moving forward, because we can use momentum, we can use gravity to start building energy, which we should, and we're squatting to then accelerate that through drive. Are we holding rotation? So we call this getting into torsion, counter-rotating the hip. Is the hip flexing? Is the femur going into torsion, externally rotating? Is the foot, are you flush to the rubber? Are you into your heel? Things that will allow good stability, like squatting. I look at this like squatting, even though we're moving lateral. So once we get all that momentum going, use as much gravity as we can, and we're delaying rotation, because once that goes, everything's going to want to start the reaction up the chain. There's a point where we talk about this, the perfect point where momentum peaks. The force vector, what's the force vector? That's the ankle to the knee. That means when I push force in the ground, it's going to go in the direction of this ankle to knee. Is this aligned somewhere to the front hip? Meaning, so when I generate force, does it take me towards the target? So is my force vector in line? And then also too, have I peaked also in torsion? So not only do I want to peak in flexion before drive, I want to peak in torsion. So it's that perfect moment that momentum peaks, flexion peaks, torsion peaks, and now we can open and drive. And that's really what happens at that point. Front foot triggers rotation, back foot powers rotation. Like I said, and so many things are being thrown at you, and each little piece that I've just talked about we could go in depth into, and the 3X Pitching Velocity program does all that for you. So checkpoint 1 is, do I have momentum? Checkpoint 2, am I getting flexion? Checkpoint 3, am I getting counter rotation, torsion? Those would be 3 checkpoints right there, and are they meeting perfectly at the right time? That's why this thing is the most important thing in the pitching delivery, the drive leg, and it's the most ignored component in pitching delivery, probably because pitching coaches don't understand it because it's so complicated. Okay, so like I said, you've done all that. You've triggered hip rotation, would be the fourth component. Did I open early or late? Meaning, did I open right out of leg lift? Or did I stay closed until last minute? Because this is the trigger to rotation. So did right before I land, then I open? Because that means if I stay closed the whole time, I have the time to do all those 3 components, and then I have time to even generate more energy towards the target, which is where I want to go. Also remember, all this energy here, if the trunk is delayed, the trunk will receive all that energy going forward. So if you want a forward trunk tilt, you got to get it in that initial movement. You got to get that energy going and delay the trunk to receive that energy. All right, so you've hit front foot. Ultimately, what do we see at that point? Checkpoints. Front foot, stable, no lead knee flexion. Studies show high velocity pitchers have more stable front leg. But high velocity pitchers also land in more flexion, but finish in more extension. But are we landing in flexion? I like to see knee behind heel. I like to see also backside, what we call triple extension. Am I extended hip flexor as much as possible? That creates full rotation. Am I extended knee as much as possible? Am I extended ankle? Now, anatomically, you might have issues in extending in that posture, but you're still trying to do the best you can. Okay, so those checkpoints. And then 2, just as important to go at that is, are my shoulders closed? Why do the shoulders have to be closed? Because when you stabilize front foot, it creates the opportunity for energy to come up, all that lower half energy to come up. And when we want the arm or the shoulders closed, so it's receiving that energy before it starts its movement. That's a better use of the speed phenomenon, meaning shows that you don't want to start the distal segment until the proximal segment has peaked its speed, and you'll get an efficient transfer. Plus, when you come out of shoulder rotation in a fully closed position, now I have more range to cover to put force in the ball, and that's what we're always trying to do. We're trying to optimize as much range, as much time to get as much force to the ball, and in the process to where that does 2 things. That allows us the potential to get a lot of force to the ball, and it allows us to do it over a longer range of time, which is less torque or less stress on those joints. Okay, so that's the hip to shoulder position that you've heard me talk about before. Okay, so from that position, now the upper body's ready to go. This is all stable, the energy's been created, the hips have started rotation, and the shoulders are delayed, so that's going to create a sequence of movement. So this has initiated the sequence and rotation. Now, of course, since this starts the movement, back hip drives back shoulder. This is the most efficient way to launch the upper body. If not, you start pulling glove side, and that starts dragging your arm. If you drive hip away from shoulder, then that pulls elbow and shoulder together, and you don't get hyperangulation arm drag. So as long as we've done that right and hip is driving back shoulder, we shouldn't be trying to pull this glove side. So if I'm pulling this glove side really hard, it's because I'm not driving my hip ahead of my shoulder. I might have went early. I might have not created a lot of energy, and now I'm trying to go make up for it. So we want tension and elasticity pulling between hips to shoulder, not shoulder to shoulder in say a scap-loaded position. That would be inefficient. So at front foot strike, next checkpoint, all right, is glove side late. Am I delayed trunk, so I'm separated? I don't want to pull early. Studies link that to the arm drag and a lot more arm injury. Then, after I've landed hip to shoulder separation, I want to just turn over glove side, okay? So this just turns over because front leg is stabilizing, oblique starts to stabilize, and then the glove side is going to add to that stability and create a fulcrum for everything to rotate around. If not, and all this is wild, we could start spinning. We don't really have a good pivot point to stabilize. So what's going to help us be precise is stability here through oblique, through glove side, and if we have good linear energy behind that, that's going to carry everything forward, which makes it easier for you to locate your pitches going in the same direction. When guys have a hard time locating pitches, they hit front foot, they don't have a lot of linear energy, and they're pulling rotationally to create energy, and now their release points are all over the place because it's not going forward, which is going to be an easier way to locate. So, am I tucking glove side? Or am I trying to pull it? I just want to tuck, and I'm not trying to pull down, I'm not trying to create energy here. I'm just stabilizing. I'm getting that fulcrum set because the energy is going to be unloading through back shoulder, and then the key from there is arm path. Talk about this when you hit front foot. There's some key things you want to be in. If you look on YouTube, I have a lot more into this. I want to see flexion in the elbow somewhere around 90. Now you could be inside 90, you could be outside 90. I don't want extreme either way. Just slightly in, slightly outside. I want to be, this is 90 degrees of abduction. I want to be 85. I want to be 23 degrees in horizontal abduction, pulling back. And I want to be, if this is 90 degrees of external rotation, this is 0, I want to be at 53 degrees. Puts me in a late cocked, scap loaded position. So when I go into shoulder rotation, okay, I also too want to make sure my weight is slightly to my glove side, what's called contralateral tilt. So when I go into rotation, the elbow can come up, ride up just above my shoulder, okay, as my arm externally rotates and lays back. That should help also with that scap load, get my scap in position underneath my shoulder to stabilize my arm back in external rotation, get away from impingement issues. Same time too, the quicker that elbow gets up and the arm lays back, the less likely we're in drag and hyperangulation, and then we're in a good position to allow the trunk to generate the energy. A lot of people get it wrong. External rotation is not a plyometric movement. It is a plyometric movement, but it shouldn't predominantly be used as a plyometric movement. You know, that external or internal rotation bounce. It's there to lay back, to give time to the trunk to generate all that energy forward. That's where the energy is here. And if you're not creating it here, or you're just spinning off, then your arm's going to try to go create it, and then you're going to have arm problems. We want the trunk creating or delivering energy, and we want the arm releasing that energy. The arm becomes a funnel or a regulator, not as much a generator. So, like I said, we're tucked, we're contralateral, we're coming out of rotation due to the hip driving the shoulder, and the elbow's abducting, scap is loading or stabilizing, arm is laying back. We're in trunk extension now too, and that allows the trunk to push forward or carry forward, because like you said, all that energy down the mound, if the trunk's delayed, after stability, it's gonna carry and accelerate that energy now, and the arm laying back is gonna allow more time for that trunk to generate that energy forward. Boom, and then once that trunk is peaked, and we've hit the end of the length of the posterior chain, the posterior chain kicks in. Also too, we'll get front leg stability to support that, hip, abduct the hip, help drive force up the posterior chain into the trunk. And once it catches the trunk, that's gonna be a good projectile to launch the arm into internal rotation. The arm's gonna go into internal rotation, but because the energy's coming up, it's gonna move into extension. As that energy pushes it forward to release the ball, that's when you know precision is going to be locked on. When you feel extension as a result of the energy coming from the back foot all the way up to the ball, that's that potential ground force energy to kinetic energy being released. And then to decelerate the arm's going to, the bicep's going to pull in, the arm's going to internally rotate, the decelerator is going to kick in. At that point, you should be all the way forward. The arm will then maybe slightly come across the body, but you feel all that energy pulling you towards the target. That's a great indication that you kept all that linear energy powering forward, and you didn't try to over-dominate it rotationally. So those key checkpoints, and you hit front foot strike, like I said, after glove tuck was, as I go into rotation, am I contralateral? Is my elbow above shoulder height? Is my scap stabilized? Retracted? Is slightly upward rotated? Is my arm laid back? Okay, next checkpoint, is my trunk carrying forward optimally to fully use and load my posterior chain? Is my front leg trying to extend to pitch release? Is my arm still laid back at this point? Okay, next checkpoint, is my arm internally rotating, extending to release that energy, internally rotating, decelerating as I continue to let all of my scap basically upwardly rotate and protract at this point to decelerate all those forces coming forward. Those are some key check points. It's a lot to look at, but like I said, you've got to understand this going in to your programming for the off season. Am I set up to achieve these positions, and where I'm lacking is my training through my drills, through my lifts, going to help me better implement those movements, those checkpoints. And then at the end of my off season, have I achieved them? And if I have, I need to maintain them. I probably need to tap into these checkpoints, observe these checkpoints, you know, once a week, once every 2 weeks, to make sure I'm not unraveling or losing my efficient and effective pitching mechanics. So I hope that, guys, that helps. This is really complicated, I get it. That's why you need to baby step through the 3X programs. You know, check out even the trainers we use, the King of the Hills, the LTEs. Watch all my videos on YouTube, so subscribe to my videos. Get into my mailing list to get more information. Just retaining more information, guys, and get the baby steps. And then one day you'll really understand the advancements here and what we're trying to develop, and then you'll become an elite, healthy, high velocity pitcher.